So, guys, I want to talk about Darby Allin and him climbing Mount Everest. That I'm actually very happy that they mentioned that he's starting to climb Mount Everest in a couple of weeks, and it's going to take him like a period of 60 days. So, what that means is probably from the time of AEW Pope, like he's probably going to be gone from mid April all the way to the start of like July if it's like 60 days. So in that time frame, and I'm very happy about this because it clearly means he's not part of the Owen Hart tournament, and he's not going to be the to be announced person, the mystery person in the Owen Hart tournament. And I think that there's three people for that spot. It either has to be MJF or the loser between Swerve Strickland and John Moxley. And I also feel it's good because you can't reward Darby by having him win the AEW championship at All In. And the reason why I say this is because, you know, the whole Moxley Death Riders faction storyline happened partially because Darby Allin took some time off to train for Mount Everest, and so we kind of got crappy storyline because of that. Because they wanted actually it to be it to be Darby Allin to beat Bryan Danielson, but because he chose to climb the mountain, that's why they gave it to Moxley. But the other thing too is that it just sends a bad message. It says like, hey, you know what? If people disappear for a couple of months to do a personal project or a life goal, they can come back and be champion like nothing really. And definitely there's a difference between Darby Allin and somebody like Roman Reigns or John Cena or The Rock or somebody in WWE who's been there for a couple of years doing a movie or something like that. So that sends a good message to say, if you're really committed or you're really over right now, people need to really focus on that type of person. So, like I said, I really think that the person who should win the Owen tournament for the men, in my opinion, it needs to be, a small list of people. It should be Will Ospreay, number one, as the top babyface. Like, Ospreay versus Moxley would be the match to have. And I think the second person would be Hangman and Moxley. And then the third person could be Swerve and Moxley, part 2, Hobbs and Moxley, part 2, or it could be, or they can give the championship to Swerve and then have him, Moxley, in the Owen tournament. Like those are the only feasible options. And I also will say that a lot of people don't want to see Darby versus Moxley because they know that that's kind of what AEW wants to do. So it becomes very predictable. And I also feel that the other thing is that, yes, they do have a tournament at All In for a contract. So what could happen is Darby could come back during that, and then he can actually win that way. Like you can have like Moxley versus somebody at All In. Moxley either retains or becomes a champion, and then Darby actually cashes in. And I think like if you did that, it wouldn't be too bad because it wouldn't be like he's getting in the main event spot by just being booked as how should I say this? He comes off more like a Money in the Bank winner, so a lot of people would kind of would digest that more as he's being opportunistic instead of just somebody like Charlotte Flair, where you feel like he's being shoehorned into the main event, and it's being built around him when he just disappeared for a while. But I also feel that, one thing that I'm not liking about Darby Allin is that you don't see any videos of him training. You don't see any updates. They're not having a camera crew or other people with him, or even he does selfie videos. Like, it would be cool if he did all that stuff during this climb up Mount Everest. And the reason why that would be good is that kind of says, hey, guys, this thing is happening. It really puts the company on my back and other things like that. I think if somebody was doing something extreme, like Darby Allin was getting a rocket ship to Mars and he was able to communicate with people or talk about his journey of training and all that stuff, I really, really think that it would help AEW gain some popularity because this is definitely a really big deal. And this would put a lot of light on the company, but it really feels like When it really reminds me what happened in TNA wrestling, where Hulk Hogan was on American Idol and he was on a lot of other shows, as a celebrity guest, but he never wore like a TNA shirt or anything like that. Really, it really feels like Darby's just doing what he wants to do, and he's not like saying, "Hey, I can use this as a billboard for the company." Because just remember, he's being paid by Tony Khan. I think a downside guarantee because he's to do this, and he's probably going to be going, between 6 to 9 months, and then also AW struggling. And actually, when he left and they had the Death Rider faction, they went down from like an average of 800,000 to like really an average around 600,000 viewers. So definitely, it's like, if they're paying him all this money, and he's kind of like, one of the more popular wrestlers on the roster, it's like, he really has to start, hustling AEW or marketing himself, but he doesn't really do that. So it's definitely a selfish choice, really. But also, too, if he gets himself killed, that's going to put that's going to be such bad publicity on AEW. And it's also kind of worse if he's like, hey, I'm not going to go out of my way to give people updates or advertise this. But now it's going to hit the news when if he dies on it, God forbid, because it could be like a Benoit situation, or it could be like, hey, what's this AEW company? They allow wrestlers to do what they want a lot more, and we need like WWE because they actually work to control their wrestlers. Like, so it would kind of highlight a lot of issues within the company. Okay, so now you're seeing, Spanish flies off the tops of the cage. Now you're seeing people getting suplexed onto boards. Now you're seeing people getting power bombed on the cinder blocks. Now people can climb Mount Everest. And I think then people say as a culture, and you kind of say this culture's changing because there's been a lot of people who have not liked WWE being so controlling, and there's a benefit to allowing people to be wrestlers, to have a lot more personality or be in charge of their art. But it's also understandable that there are some people who know how to book themselves or book matches and concepts or risky moves or shock moves in matches and do that correctly. And then there's people who just don't know how to do it. Or there's people who may say, hey, I'm doing this project outside of my job and I'm going to do this to put attention on the company, positive attention. And then there's people who don't care about doing that. Like one thing that I lost respect for Edge about was that he took a couple months off to help during the hurricane efforts and release. Like they should just given him like an update, be like, hey, this guy's taking time off to do all these things. Or, do videos of him like giving out big checks or whatever to the hurricane effort just to kind of put a good eye on AEW. But no, he just disappeared for a couple of months and was paid while he was taking time off to help out during relief efforts. Like they should just like at least marketed that. And I know that may seem selfish, but that's just an example of somebody's doing what they want to do instead of being at work. And even with Darby's the same thing. Like this is a really big deal. This can put a lot of good attention, good eyeballs on AEW with this Daredevil type of spot, really. So, those are all my thoughts about it. I think that it's unfortunate that he's not using this to market AEW when he should be doing this. I think it's a great thing that he's not in the Owen tournament, or they're not doing something like, okay, Group B with the men, like it's going to be delayed until Darby climbs down the mountain. Like it's going to be about his accommodation. So I'm happy that they're not doing that. And he doesn't deserve to be in the main event. Maybe next year. But ultimately, if you're going to be climbing a mountain, you're going to be doing all this stuff, really, then you have to understand that, you're part of the back burner. So I think that's good that he is not going to be part of the Owen tournament. And I think that's kind of a bit cautionary about how he is not advertising AEW with doing such a crazy stunt that could be putting a lot of publicity on the company.